Hello, and welcome to the Uncensored Journey podcast, a raw, unfiltered guide to truths that matter. We are diving deep, getting real about what it takes to truly transform inside and out. Ready for truth? Ready for transformation? You're in the right spot. I'm Cindy, and with me as always is Gabriella. Now, let's get uncensored.
Thank you, Cindy. Today we have a special guest with us. Her name's Heiki, and she is a multi-disciplinary artist and performer and the owner of a line of high-end Italian accessories. After decades of thriving on the outside and merely surviving on the inside, she found a path to the true liberation of patterns and beliefs that had been controlling her whole existence. Learning for herself that internal harmony is indeed possible, leading to a life of inner peace and a sense of self she had not known. Heiki decided in 2016 that the only path forward was passing on what had been given to her. She founded the nonprofit, The Charging Room 11, an organization focused on both centered alternative therapies for female survivors of emotional, physical, and sexual violence. Witnessing individuals with intense trauma histories transform their lives through the work of practitioners using different somatic, body-centered modalities, she knew what her next step was going to be. She studied to become an integrative somatic trauma therapy practitioner, as well as a mindfulness practitioner and addiction recovery coach. And today, she runs her thriving private practice, Radical Presence. Her work focuses on somatic inner child work, deeply influenced by IFS, which stands for Internal Family Systems. She facilitates workshops in New York, Italy, and Dubai, and she's here with us today. Hi, Heiki. How's your day going?
Hi, Gabriella and Cindy. It's wonderful to be here. Just great.
Good. Can you share with us more about your personal transformation that led to your current practice? What were the pivotal moments for you, and what really shifted you towards somatic work?
Yeah, of course, the foundation of it all. So the pivotal moments came astoundingly late in my life. It took me some 36 years to get there. And what that looked like for me was really finding out that I had never been home. And what that meant for me was I had lived entirely outside of my body for all of those years. And my kind of patterns and behavioral belief systems had just been keeping me going, while it was almost a two-path street. And when I tried to talk myself out of everything I didn't want to feel anymore for decades. And it just didn't work. It just didn't work. And I'm sure I got help, but nothing changed, and certainly nothing transformed. So my really difficult behavioral patterns, which were anywhere from severe anger to severe isolation, were handled by my addictive substance abuse behaviors, and I just didn't see an end. So what happened really is that I got desperate enough to look beyond what I had been doing. And what that meant for me was not feeding the narrative that was inside of me. I can't win. Everything is always the same. I'm a victim. All of that. And I found someone who does somatic work, which I had no idea what that meant. And I didn't care, because I, at that point, didn't care about anything. So this person, with an incredible gentleness and patience, got me into my body. And that, of course, doesn't just mean, okay, I feel my body now. Maybe I feel good in my body now, no matter what it looks like. It's beyond that, no? Because everything that had been experienced in my early years is living there. That's our existence, no? Everything that has ever happened to us lives in our body. So I just want to come in here and say soma means the living body in its wholeness, which is a bit beyond this thing that carries our head around, no? Because the mind is the most prominent thing. And I came into that living body, and it was extremely hard because the pain of it, of actually getting in touch with all that was there, allowing the opening, and everything has to do with listening to the pain that was held in the body that I had chosen to step out of. Took a while and was intense and was incredibly beautiful because I had somebody to guide me through it and that I trusted. And you ask about the transformation part of that and how that got me into this work is that years later, when I had found a way, you just read it in the bio a little bit, when I had found a way of being okay, being me, being okay with certain patterns that of course were still there, but being gentle and compassionate towards them, and being able to look in the mirror and not spit at it. All of those intense, really adverse emotions that I had been living around were easing and easing. And I could get up in the morning and say, yay, another day. And that was unknown for me, unknown. So a few years into this, I was in my fashion, art, all of that. Everything was swell and very cool, no? And that just wasn't enough anymore. That is where there was this urge to do something. And what happened is that the universe did it for me, because a pretty awful accident and broke my neck. And it was one of those experiences in our lives that changes everything, because I should have been dead. It made no sense to 3 professors at the hospital where I was brought that I was alive, and if alive, that I wasn't completely paralyzed. So I do believe in miracles, and that was my big miracle. From that moment on, it was the first time in my life that I thought, okay, maybe there is a reason that I'm here. Maybe I do have something to bring and give. And that turned around really quickly for me. That I had to listen to those forces that were coming in and just say, okay, I'm passing this on. I'm giving this to others, because my life I'm a different person today. I can be present today with whatever is. And that's when I did the nonprofit. And from there, I went into my education, and here I am today. So those were the 2 kind of pivotal, I think, moments.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. Yes, I appreciate you sharing the definition of soma and somatic work. I've had some experience with it myself, and it's extremely powerful, extremely powerful.
Mm.
Having overcome challenges like addiction and issues with identity, how do these experiences shape the way you coach others today?
Really profoundly. No, really profoundly. And I think the core of that is the compassionate approach, the approach of, I hear you, I see you, and that informs my baseline start with anyone that comes into my kind of professional realm is, let's just start by saying there's nothing wrong with you. Never has been, never will be. What is so disturbing you in your behavioral patterns, what is really getting you to a point of maybe not wanting to live anymore, or feeling you hate yourself, or not having relationality in your life because it's just impossible with your behavioral patterns, any of them. And there's of course millions of others, the people pleasing and the isolation and all of that. None of those are faults or wrong with you. All of those are there to protect and help you survive. There's nothing but good intentions in your system. And I would not be able to really believe that. I can learn that. I can study that and say, oh, that's a really different approach. That's really lovely. No, that rings true in my heart. But for me to have felt that, to have felt this awful, hateful person that had hurt so many people through mainly her substance abuse, through other patterns in her life, other addictive patterns in her life, run through life as a destructive force, just try to survive. And when that compassion came my way to, okay, let's look at this honestly. The core there is okay. Let's see who is hurting so much that they need to be protected so loudly that these destructive behaviors are in place, right? So having lived that, having felt that, even when I share it here, I feel the release in the body. Every time I talk about it, I can feel the release of, it's a relief. Maybe there is hope. maybe we can help these patterns. Maybe we can undo in a gentle way. We're not talking about undoing. No, nothing can be strong, violent in our systems, but undoing in a gentle way these belief systems that have run everything. I would say my own personal experience informs everything I do, which doesn't mean I share it. I will only share it if it feels appropriate and if it feels it will be supportive to the process. So I hope that answers a little bit.
It does. It does. We all have our own unique way of processing things. I completely agree. Often speaking our truth or just speaking it out loud, speaking what is going on out loud is the most freeing act that you could do for yourself.
That has, yeah. Here we would move into shame, right? Into overcoming and allowing shame to give us some space to actually be who we are now. Because really the reason we don't speak in our truth, we don't speak up, we don't get honest and vulnerable is the shame running it, no? Driving it, shutting us down, keeping us quiet. So that is a beautiful moment when we get to speak from our truth.
I also think like we're just as sick as our secrets, right? So if once they're out there, they just don't hold that power anymore. So you can release it from your body and release it from your psyche and just take a breath and move past it.
That's right. It's that first step of awareness, no?
Yeah.
That we bring things into the light, and that's most of the time not enough, no? Then we get to accept that in ourselves, and then we get to release it, no? Then we get to do something about it. And so that awareness, that bringing it into the light is definitely the key component, I think, always, you know?
I agree. And then fully accepting that whatever it is, right? Like this was a part of my life, fully accepting that so that you can be forgiving of yourself and can let go of it to move on to the next part of your life and just be done with it, wash it away. I agree.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And that's where we move from the past into the present, no?
Yeah, I agree. I was wondering if you could, for people who might not know what somatic therapy is, if you can explain maybe what that is completely.
Sure. So somatic therapy is an overarching term, no, for many somatic. There is something that calls itself somatic therapy, and I can't speak to exactly what they use and what approaches they have to the body-centered work, but ultimately, somatic therapies are often referred to for many body-centered modalities, psychotherapies as well as other practices. And really the key to this is the awareness in the beautiful, amazing scholars that have come and have become our teachers, realizing that what I said before, no, this fact, this now scientifically proven fact that everything we have ever gone through will be stored in our bodies, in our soma, so the word soma is so important because it says the living body in its wholeness, which integrates mind, body, soul, spirit, no? It's not just the body. It's not that body that gets us. It's the one that feels, that senses, that everything. And of course, in the body is where adverse experiences get stored and get stuck. And so over the decades, of therapeutic approaches, psychotherapy, psychiatry, all of that, all of the amazing research, it became clearer and clearer, let's say, over the decades, in the last century, that somehow talking ourselves out of trauma is not really working, right? Talk therapy, any of the analytical, any of the Jungian, the Freudian, all of that has its place and is incredibly supportive and helpful and can save lives. What it doesn't really achieve is this transformation. And by transformation, we mean not changing a person, not going, okay, you've been through all this sexual trauma. Now we're going to turn you into a resilient person and you're going to help a lot of people. It's a bit externally influenced. No, we're going to power through this thing that can land very brutally on a system that's been adversely affected by experiences or even traumatized. No, what we do when transformation is our goal is first of all, listen. And so somatic modalities come in and say, we're going to listen to the body. Because the body shows us what's going on in the autonomic nervous system being the part of the brain, informed by the part of the brain that is the involuntary responses to things. So when we have had sexual trauma and we see a guy that looks like the perpetrator and we start sweating and shaking, we don't want that to happen. As a matter of fact, the opposite. We would like to just be normal and try to disappear. But our body, our soma, is reliving what it lived. And it's telling us, get out of here, you've got to leave. It's living exactly through what happened then. And there's, of course, very much less deep experiences, no? It can be small disturbances in our lives that give us these physical responses, reactions that I want to correct that. They might seem small, they're never small, right? We say, it's the famous somebody coming to us and saying, I don't really know what to work in the past because I've had a great family. I had amazing parents. I grew up in a really loving home, and us coming in gently and saying, okay, I hear you. It might have been that, but I bet you it's going to take me really little time to make you see that there was not just that, right? Not to convince you had a terrible upbringing, but there's going to be some, if you have these behavioral patterns and these fears and these thoughts today, there is a chance something happened to you. And again, that might be the moment of losing a toy and being really desperate and needing that hug from the caretaker, and that hug never came. That can be enough for us to thrive off of for a lifetime until we become aware of, oh, in that very moment, my little system decided I'm not worthy of love. I'm not worthy to get my needs met. And that will inform a lot of things in our lives. Again, when I say littler things, that doesn't mean little in our systems. And all of that will manifest in the body. And when I do the inner child work, when I go to the past, when I go to the subconscious, we enter that through the body in a whole. If we logically try to figure out, oh, let me see if there is a 5-year-old in there that we're not going to get anywhere. We're just not, because this beautiful mind that when we talk about somatic therapies and bottom up, from the bottom to the top therapies or approaches or practices, we don't shun the mind. We don't do the opposite of what the mental health world has done for centuries at this point, since Descartes. Mind over body. That's a bit of a violence that's been imposed on us. And it has changed the Western world. It has completely changed the Western industrialized world, this mind over body. So we're by all means not coming in now saying, okay, we're going to swap that around, body over mind. No, we're looking for balance. We're saying bottom up. We're saying, let's acknowledge that fact that 90% almost of our decisions are informed from the bottom up, not from the top down. Let's just honor that a bit and bring some balance here. The mind is a beautiful instrument, makes us who we are, And at the same time, we get to honor all of us. We get to honor the soma. The mind is part of the soma. So I don't know if I answered the somatic therapies question a little bit about why we do go into the body and releasing those patterns in the nervous system, and if there's any other application.
I think that's a beautiful explanation. So if I'm hearing you correctly, the somatic work that you do and the way that your definition you just gave is under your definition, is the unconscious or the subconscious mind part of it? Or where's the correlation between the subconscious mind and the somatic body, so to speak? How do you view
that's a great question. Obviously, I'm not going to go into scientific terms here. That's not my role at all, and not my expertise, But the reason I mentioned the subconscious in the subtext of, or the main subject of soma and somatics, is that the capacity of entering our subconscious mind is really hard through the mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
We can, however, coming into the body, it is easy to a point of sometimes absolutely amazing. What that means is, just if it's okay to give you a little example, somebody saying, I have been so anxious, I've been struggling with anxiety so bad in the last few days that I barely slept anymore. My work was affected. I can't. I'm like, and if I come in there and say, okay, do you want to see maybe what's causing this? No? Do you want to think for a moment about what could be the cause, what could be? Most likely they'll sit there and they'll try to figure out, no? Figure out what's going on, what's been going on, what triggered me in the last, no? The language that we hear a lot out there now. There is a lot of this kind of semi-therapeutic language out there where I sometimes think that can be a little tricky, because I hear young kids, like 20-year-olds, talk about, I got triggered and then this happened and then my nervous system, and okay, let's take this easy a little bit, no? And so that's what will happen though, no? Instead, and we might get somewhere, we might not get somewhere. We might get some explanation. Now there's a really beautiful quote actually that I'm just thinking about, which is from, sorry, I just want to share this because it's simple. It's Frida from Reichmann's. She was a big influencer in Hakomi, and she said, our client needs an experience, not an explanation. And the experience happens in the body. Every single experience we have in our lives happens in the body. Now, when we change this, oh, do you want to figure out what's been happening through the week? What triggered this anxiety? Into, okay, I hear you. I sense the anxiety. I can tell. How about you sense into that for a moment and see if you can find it in your body? Where and how is it manifesting in your body? So I'll walk a person through that, and the person will find exactly where in the body it's manifesting. Usually anxiety in the chest, there's tightness, can come up in the throat, and then shoulders up, whatever it is. And that's when it becomes really real. This anxiety all of a sudden is not an abstract anymore. That's just disturbing me and bothering me, right? It is now something dwelling in my living body. And that's where relationship becomes possible. That's where we go in and say, I'm actually curious about you. What are you trying to tell me? Holding so tight here. And that's where gently we slide into subconscious. Because from here, we do not try to figure out what this anxiety that's coming to the body is wanting to tell us. We're actually in complete listening mode. We're making enough space in our body to be able to listen and say, hey, what's up? And that's where, for me, this direct link from body somatic work, sensing, being in our sensing self, to having the capacity to listen to the subconscious is manifest. No, I don't know I hope that makes a little bit of.
Yeah, no, thank you for clarifying that.
There.
That's what I was thinking as well.
Yeah.
And going back to what you said about mind over body, I think it's also, I love somatic work because it's really delves into the feminine and to the divine feminine energy versus the masculine. Like, we live in a very patriarchal society, and everything's about pushing and being stronger. And the work that you're doing is helping balance that, but it's what we know, what we're born learning. And it's great that you're shifting the conversation and bringing more harmony and balance.
Yeah, I really appreciate you mentioning that, because it's a big and gentle, but a gentle driving force in my work, I have to say, is this taking a part of the patriarchal system, which is internally ingrained within us, and not just in a sense that we act from it, but our internal world is acting upon the patriarchal systems. No, that is where our internal battles come from, because there will always be an energy which sometimes we can call a part or an energy or whatever it is within us, that'll dominate another, pushing through with that power over energy. No? And doing this systemic internal work, we get to start on the inside on doing that. Saying, wait a minute, whoa, I can have an absolute, I don't want to say militant, but really passionate feminist client in front of me. who's got there, who's found her boundaries, who's found her strength, who's found her powerfulness. I like to stay away from the word power because of this whole thing. So I like to use powerfulness with the 2 L's, who stands in that, grounded in her powerfulness. And before you know it, we will find in her system some energy where a part or an energy of her is completely dominating another. So there might be a part that says, inside of her, that says, I want to be a good mother to my kids, to my growing kids, but we don't need to overdo it anymore. They're growing up now. We can just be a mother in the background. And then there can be a part that comes in and judges and says, you are such a bad parent. How dare you abandon your children? That'll be the internal dialogue. And this person will be most likely our dominant voices, we believe. So that is what I'm talking about internally. And then we get to go in there and say, okay, are you able and willing and ready to welcome in this really judgmental energy and hear it? What is it afraid? What is it afraid would happen if you actually allowed yourself to be a hands-off mother? And again, that's where we get all the answers, But that is that patriarchal subject is enormous and beautiful. And I'm glad you brought that in there, in here. It is essential, I think, because it's seeping into everything in our lives. Inner female relationships, it's everywhere. We have bought into it. And yes, the gentler we can undo that, the better.
Absolutely. So tell us more about the radical presence. Find the concept. I know that's the name of your business, and explain its role in the healing practice. Like, how did that?
Yeah. It came to be because, interestingly, a long time ago, I started in my own healing journey. I started to become obsessed about presence because I could tell in my meditative practice that was the place where I felt best. Thing is, and then I studied mindfulness and MBSR and all those things. And thing is that I never really understood why. And then I thought, in good old mindfulness fashion, just let that go. You don't have to figure it out. No, just let that need to know go. And there I went for years. And then I came up to building this practice, and it came right away. I thought, this is it. And what is so meaningful about it is that, yes, of course, it is that minute in our 20-minute meditation where we feel amazing, or those 2 minutes or those moments. And what I've come to understand in a very deep way is presence, feels radical presence, being here now, no matter what, feels so wonderful. And I'm not talking about blissful when we're in some kind of retreat where there's a lot of senses and a lot of no, I'm not talking about that bliss state. I'm talking about that absolute and utter sense of wellness and grounding. And what I learned over time in this work and integrating all these different modalities is that it simply means we are home. When we're completely radically present, we're home. And what that means is when we are home, when we're in this very moment, in this very present moment, we are actually, what home means is we're in our adult self. We're here. We're in connection with the fact that we're an adult. And there comes an enormous peace with that. Because it's that place within us where adverse experiences don't kick us off track, where we don't lose it, where we don't get desperate, where we don't think we don't want to. It's that place where adverse experience can come and go. And we can say, this is really hard, or I'm actually suffering right now, or I'm grieving right now, but we still feel in the center. That is who we are as adults. And so as soon as we're not in radical presence, there are some kind of energies from the past coming in, not necessarily running the show. They can, but they will have some kind of influence on our current experience. And that can be as simple as in meditation. What are all these thoughts when people say, I can't stop my thoughts in meditation? Their worry, their fear, their anxiety, their maybe excitement, their all these things that we cannot turn off. Now, of course, the more we try to turn them off, the louder they get. Why is that? Because, and this is my belief, what I see every day, because they're informed by younger energies in our system, by either really little kids or by the famous adaptive teenager in there, the one that will just do anything for the feelings that were developed early on not to be felt. Lots of the fear and worry and anxiety comes from this protective energy that was developed somewhere in our early years, in our teenage years, to protect something that got wounded under. Not being in presence to me today means that. When I don't feel in presence, there is something going on that's informing my present that is not from the present. And that is where our patterns live, no? Some of us are, we can go into them. Some of us get a real need to control. It's okay, even if I find somebody who needs to absolutely sit down in the correct way to meditate. It's wait, give me a minute. No, I have to do this, and my legs have to be perfect. And what I see there is, okay, this person is not in presence. There's some energy in this person's system that has a huge need for perfection, to control the way they show up. And we're going to get to tend to that. And the more through the meditation practice, the more we get into the body, the more that person becomes present with herself, the more capacity we're going to find to listen to that and say, hey, there's something from the past that came. And when the more in presence we come, in a felt sense, it is usually, for most of us, very spacious feeling in our bodies. Some people feel light when they really focus on presence. And for many of us, somatically, in the physical body, in the wholeness, we feel spaciousness. And when we enter that spaciousness, we get to be with and tend to whatever is there from the past, rather than become that, because we become that. That is where the IFS lens is so brilliant, because it's really clear about, okay, we can learn to know and discern when we're taken over by a younger self, and make the space, ideally somatically, within ourselves to say, let me be with you so I can hear you, rather than be you, because when we're one, I can't help you, right? So radical presence is the mother of all my little ones.
I love that analogy. That's beautiful. So I had a question. When you refer a lot to the teenage years, and in my school of thought, which is the NLP world, most of the formative beliefs and deprogramming happen between 0 and 7. So
yes,
where do you stand on that?
Yes, absolutely. I don't think I could dare undo that, because I think that is really, there's decades of scientific now we have, maybe we have no proof of anything, but as close as it gets to proof. There's a lot of outcome studies, I think, that tell us that's what it is. And that is what I, in my work, call the wound. That is where the wound gets inflicted.
I see.
That's where attachment happens, attachment tendencies, and that's where our beliefs build. And when I talk about teenager, the inner teenager, the adaptive kid, those are the behavioral patterns that tend to be the ones we really dislike, because they're really powerful, and they're the ones that whenever we meet, that means the isolator, the controller, the overachiever, the underachiever, the people pleaser, then there's that whole family of typical kind of the anxiety warrior, all of those. And then there comes a higher echelon, which then goes into the ones that, if these energies don't manage the system, which means the kids don't have to feel their wounding. Let's go with the non-worthiness, that we talked about earlier. This kid that learned at 3 years of age that it's got to be unworthy because mom or parent wasn't there when I needed them, because they have no capacity, right, neurobiologically, to blame the parent and say she's just they can't, because they depend on them, so they will always turn it against themselves. So that wound becomes unbearable to feel, or the othering, the typical othering, You need to have feedback from a parent at age 3, 4 that you're beautiful. You're a kid a girl who wears guys' clothing, or you're a boy who keeps dressing himself up. And you need a parent to say you're beautiful no matter what. When they don't get that, gets internalized as I'm other, I'm wrong, I'll never be loved and accepted. So those are the wounds, right? Just really broad kind of no explanations and examples. And then at some point, what comes in is this kid will say, there's 2 ways of dealing with it. No, one kid will learn from that. If I just do everything that they want, they actually give me love. So there comes the people pleaser. And that becomes quite compulsive. No, that becomes very powerful and can override a person's life, because they will do that on the job. They will do that in their intimate relationships. Everybody goes crazy and says, just do what you want. And they can't. Because who is driving that is that little wounded child. And we look at, in the systemic work, we look at the one in between, the one that's actually driving the people pleasing as this protective force that most of the time came in somewhere in the later years. When in the teenage years, when the brain starts becoming aware, reasoning starts coming in, but not fully. So it's a reactive response to not wanting to feel what's there. And I always work with that, and informed again, that is an IFS approach, always working with that powerful protective energy first. That can be threatening to a person within their system. People can come to you and say, I have so much rage in me, I'm afraid of it. Or I can't stand this people pleaser or this caretaker. I can't stand it any people. The classic person who lives with an addicted person who says, I just don't want to do this anymore, but I can't help it. We first of all go there. We don't go to the wound immediately, because there is a protection of the wound. And it's like just ripping off the Band-Aid when we just say, okay, let's hear that kid that suffered so much. Whoa, wait a minute. Maybe that's not ready to allow to be seen. That is where there's many different ways, of course, of naming that. For me, what works is this adaptive teenager, because clients really get it. Clients feel it. They feel when they're in that teen, especially in intimate relationships. They feel when they and their partner are just 2 teenagers. They're with each other. They're not even in their present selves. Some couples I work with will come to me and say, I don't think we've ever met now that we're doing this work. I think it's just our teenagers. The reactivity, you do this and I get mad, and the door slamming and it's not our present. No, it's working as a kind of term, but the core key will always remain those first 7 years, and getting to that is always the goal. No?
Yeah. I love that. I'm gonna borrow it.
Yeah, please.
That's beautiful.
Please. That's the point of what we do, no?
What advice would you give to someone who's struggling with trauma and or addiction, that they feel overwhelmed by the idea of healing or transformation?
It's really interesting. When I read that question, my initial response was that knee-jerk response was, or that maybe just instinctive, was none. I can't give advice. Who am I to give advice? And then I thought about it more, and I thought, yeah, of course, I know what she means. No, I think the most important thing I would start with is making this person feel understood. And this is where the personal experience comes in. No? We're not here to do anything that feels overwhelming. We don't have to set as our goal transformation. How about we get curious about what is most frustrating you at the moment, and that you're most struggling with. And we just start there. One of the most important, here we come back to the patriarchy. No? One of the most important things I asked myself in the beginning of this, can you do this? Can you honor everything you would want from somebody and give that on? One of the most important questions there was, can you work with people without having any agenda? Because that was something that landed as, I have to use the word violence in my system over and over, the famous treatment plan. And so that will be something that will be addressed definitely in this context of you saying, what if somebody comes to you and wants help, but is overwhelmed by transformation, by this notion? That's the first things we're going to look at. We're going to do this on your terms, not on mine. And we're going to go as slow as it needs. And usually that part in that system, in that nervous system that's all overwhelmed, overwhelm is one of the top 3 sensations in our nervous system that is felt as unbearable. Overwhelm is that feeling that we always try to immediately tend to and be with and see what is actually, because again, in radical presence, and when I say any of these, I want to name that. Any of the radical presence talk that comes here from my direction, I want to name that all of that excludes threatening, adverse, violent experiences in the present moment. We're talking about this radical presence and the capacity that gives us when we are in safe environments. So I want to make that very clear for anyone who feels under threat at the moment, who might be with their abuser in their home, who might be in a place where there is threat around them. That is not what we're talking about, right? So that is really important that we name that. There's other interventions to be done, not sense into your presence. So that's really important for me. And yeah, I hope that in terms of the person who comes and feels that overwhelm, that is a little helpful to say just the approach that I come in with. No, it is just not going to, it's not going to be, we got this, don't worry. Transformation is possible for everyone. Because again, I feel like that is not really hearing, that is not really seeing, that is not really tending to what is there and holding that. No?
Thank you so much. That was a beautiful explanation or beautiful advice that you would give somebody to help, that's seeking help. Is there anything that we haven't talked about today that you want to mention, want people to know?
That's always the big question. No, I just want people to know, seriously, nothing is ever wrong with you. That everything that we see as wrong, adverse, difficult, hateful, everything we most struggle with is there with a good intention. And that we can help release that. That can change if we just don't fight so hard. The harder, and that's where the young energies come in, especially the 1 to 7, the kids. And then also the angry teenager. When we come in to those energies and say, I hate you, just shut up. I don't want to feel this anymore. I can't believe you're still there. All these inner languages that we have, no, in our heads. What's wrong with you? How often do we internally say that? I can't believe I did that again or said that again. What's wrong with you? That language lands on those young energies. And if any of us, any human, has been around kids or teenagers, they will know that doesn't fly real well. The little kid will scream louder if we say, just go to your room. I can't stand you right now. Again, are you kidding me? That will get louder because that kid needs to be heard and seen. Teenager, let's not even talk about it. A teenager stands in front of mommy, daddy, whoever. Oh, mom, you don't understand. You know that energy? And that parent will say, I can't stand what you're doing it again. Just get out of my face. Just send the voice. Believe me, that teenager will not calm down. That teenager will come back with a double force, either an hour later or 2 days later because they went sleeping over with a friend, and all hell will break loose. And that exact same thing happens internally with us. The more we come down on them, the more we facilitate this language of negativity. Again, can't believe it. What's wrong with you? Oh, I don't want to feel this anymore. The louder they will eventually get. So really, that is what I want to leave everyone with, is remember that. They're all there for a reason. They're there with good intention. And whatever doesn't feel good to us in our adult self, we get to help. And that's where the transformation happens.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Can you tell people where they could find you on social media or websites? What's your handle?
Yeah, sure, of course. Surprise. The website is radicalpresence.org, though, .org. And it's /contact if people don't want to skip that. And then on Instagram, it's Heiki, so HEIKI .radical presence, all in one word. And those are the best ways, I think, of contacting.
Awesome. Thank you again for being here with us today. And thanks.
No, thank you.
Awesome. And thank you so much to all of our listeners this week. Please can subscribe on all our platforms, and you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at The Uncensored Journey. You can follow me at The Worth Warrior, and you can find Gabriella at Phoenix Medicine. Until next week, bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.